everybody. I'm sorry about the glare. I'm doing this video at night. I've tried to eliminate the lighting from elsewhere. and you see the shining of the sun behind me. This is Eating at April's, and in between working on my projects, including painting, I'm going to start a pie crust because I'm going to make us an apple blackberry pie. I read about that in a book, and I've had that combination before, and I decided that I was in the mood for that and that I was going to make one. I've sold pies and I've gifted pies, and the pie recipe that I use is from this book right here. I use Mary's flaky pie crust pastry, and it's on page 37 of her Sweet Treats Dessert Cookbook. If you've not gotten a copy of that and you like American desserts, get you a copy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through putting everything together and how to do it. I'm going to read the ingredients: 2 2/3 cup all-purpose flour, not self-rising, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 3/4 cup, which equals 1½ sticks of cold unsalted butter, cut into 1/2 inch pieces, 1/4 cup vegetable shortening cut into 4 pieces. I don't use the shortening. I do an all butter crust myself. So what I use is 2 sticks of butter, and then 5 to 6 tablespoons of ice water. I've got a mug of water chilling in my freezer right now. I leave that in there for a few minutes while I do the stuff that I have to do. So we're going to get started. Turn this so you can see what I'm doing here. Now, the first thing you do with this recipe is you're going to measure your flour into your bowl. And you don't have to sift the flour unless you really, really want to. So let's get 2 2/3 cups. Get my 2/3 cups first. There's 1/3. There's the second third. We're going to get 2 cups. Cup. And the second cup. All right. Now, whoops, you see what I did? It's not exactly level, so I've got to go in there and level it. You've got to make sure that you do that. That's why you can push on it a little bit, and then take your hand and do that. Okay, there we go. Now, if you really want to sift the flour, here's the easy way to do it. That'll break it up some. Okay, so we're done with the flour. Calls for 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and I've done this so many times I just throw a little bit of salt in there, not a lot, just a little. There we go, that'll get it. I do measure the sugar though. 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. Now, you want to make sure that there's no lumps in your sugar. There we go. Okay, and we've got all these things out of the way, because we're done with those now. Now all I have to do is mix these things together. Mix it up real good. See that? If you're not careful, you'll spill it on the stove like I've done multiple times. Now this is, it's more work than using a store-bought crust, but the store-bought crust, in my opinion, doesn't add anything to the recipe. You may as well buy a pie if you're going to get a store-bought crust, as opposed to making one, as opposed to putting all that time and effort with fresh ingredients if you're just going to have a crust that tastes like cardboard. Once you make your own crust, you will not view the store-bought crust the same. Okay, that's good. Now we're going to get that out of the way. Next, I'm going to get my 2 sticks of butter. And what you want to do is keep those cold. The trick to this is keeping everything that goes in with that flour mixture as cold as possible. These are still rock solid. Now, what you want to do, this guy right here, or a steak knife if you prefer, you're going to take your batter, and wrap it. We're about, no, mess up. We're about 5 minutes in, and I'm pushing this over there to keep the cat off the counter. You're going to take your butter and you're going to cut it into small pieces, because the smaller the pieces are, the easier it's going to be to work that into the flour. See what I'm doing here? So I've cut them 4 times long ways. And I'm going to cut them again, just little bitty pieces, as big as my pinky finger. This is the size of one of my pieces, and if you want to, you can even cut it smaller than that. Okay. Back into the flour. Cut the second one up. Now, some people will use an apparatus known as a pastry cutter. I've never bought one of those. I do this whole thing by hand. This is the way I've always done it. Maybe one day I'll buy a pastry cutter so that I don't have to. We're about 7 minutes, and that is a new record for the cat being off the countertop. Nessa, get down. I don't want to handle my animals while I'm baking. All right. Now, the next part, we're going to see how long this takes. We're 7.5 minutes in. Let's see how long it takes to rub this all in with our hands. I'm going to tilt it just a little bit more. There we go. Okay. See, first, you see I'm breaking all this up. Breaking them up first. And the flour is going to coat them. See that? Okay. And then what you do is you're going to mush the butter between your fingers and mush it in with the flour like that. And you're just going to put your hands in there. And you're going to mush, mush. See, I'm mushing and mushing. I'm just going to mush all that together. And that's all there is to it. Now, it takes a few minutes and your arms are going to get tired. If you want to use a pastry cutter or an electronic food processor to do this more quickly, that's okay. I have never done that myself, but a lot of people do that. And cleanup of those machines is not that difficult. So our kitchen is small, which you've seen if you've watched very many of these videos. So for me, storage is an issue, so I don't want to have too many gadgets and apparatuses in my kitchen. So I do all this stuff by hand. So we were at 7.5 minutes when we started. We're at 9 minutes now, so this has been 1.5 minutes so far. It's only 90 seconds. It's not too bad. The first time that I did a recipe that called for rubbing the butter in like this, it was from something called a Little Irish Cookbook. And for their scones, you rub the butter into the flour with your finger until it resembled coarse breadcrumbs. The more coarse this flour is, the more coarse this butter is, breadcrumb style, the easier it's going to be to mix the water in with this. Now, crusts are something that you make ahead of time. Some people just pop them in the fridge for a half hour. It's 8:20 now. Ted will be home 10:30 maybe, 10:30, 11 o'clock. I'm going to make his dinner, and then he'll go to sleep around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll take the pie crust out and bake the pies. So we're at 10 minutes now. We're a little over half done with this. So we're about 3 minutes in. And Nessa's off to my right, but you cannot see her right now. She is so cute. She is so nosy. She thinks everything is hers. She says she's the chef and this is her kitchen, and she just lets me cook in it. So you see how I'm taking that butter and smashing it up real good. Smashing that butter up. And it is very important, I cannot stress this enough, it is very important to start with cold, very cold butter. Because that is what's going to make your crust hold together successfully. I'm not sure why the temperature matters for that, because if you think about it, using your hands increases the temperature of the butter. But there was a couple of times that I melted the butter a little bit in the microwave first before I got started, and I was not pleased with the outcome. So I found, my hands are tired. Keep going. I found that if I started with the cold butter like the instructions said to do, doing what you're told, that the pie crust turned out very well. Okay. So if I've got any more big clumps, you want to get the big clumps out of there and have the pieces as small as possible. Some people will just use 2 butter knives and do this. I've tried that before. I didn't like doing that at all. This is the way that suits me best. You can even rub a little bit like that. Just want to get that butter as small as possible. Now, if you do decide to use shortening, it's the same technique with your shortening as it is with your butter. But honestly, you're not going to get any nutrients from shortening. It's a hydrogenated fat. It doesn't have any of the good stuff. It's just cheap. It's a cheap filler. And it's okay if you need to do that. But if you can afford to get the butter, I highly recommend you do it. And for Pete's sake, do not buy margarine to do this with. Margarine does not melt like butter, and it's one ingredient away from being plastic. And that is just nasty. They fed me that garbage when I was growing up, and I didn't know any better, and neither did they. So glad we know better now. They're saying that margarine is part of the reason why heart problems are the way that they are these days. Why people believed that having butter was bad for you, I will never understand. You got to be careful who you listen to. You got to be careful who's giving you your tips on what to eat. Okay, I've had it. Okay, this is 13 and a half minutes in. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it took me 6 minutes to rub this in with my hands. Y'all think you can handle that? Okay. Yeah. 6 or 7 minutes. Okay, that's good. Now what I'm going to do, this calls for 5 to 6 tablespoons of ice water. Which I will pull out of the freezer now. It's got a little crystallization of ice formed on the top of it. I'm just going to break through that. Okay. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll start with 4.5. And then I know this is going to feel yucky. This is going to feel real, real yucky, especially if you have never done this before, but you're going to get your hands in there and you're just going to get started. Woo, it's cold. Ice water, ice cold butter. There we go. See, it's coming together. See that? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put that other tablespoon in there. Now use more or less as you need it, but I do find that making your crust plenty moist enough is going to make it hold together better. Way better. It's going to be very best seasoned too with the humidity in the air. Okay, so we are up to tablespoon number 6 now. I'm going to put in a 7th one. 7.5. This is still pretty daggone dry. Good. Good. Here we go. Just about. Okay, now we can see it's actually holding together pretty good at this point. Yes, ma'am. Now this is enough for a double crust. I just need a little bit more liquid. So I'd say I did about between 8 and 9 tablespoons. Keep track. If my crust is too dry, it does not roll out well. And it's time to assemble everything. Okay, this is plenty moist enough, and I'm just going to work all that in there. I've never had problems with overworking the dough. I've never had problems with that. Work all that in there. So, oh yeah, it's nice and moist. Just want all that evenly distributed. Okay. Smooth all that in there. Okay, now we've got a lovely silky disc. And since this is for a double crust, I'm going to break it in half. The way I judge to see if they're the same size is not by looking at them. It's by picking them up. Because they got to weigh the same. And this one's a little bit smaller. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see. These feel about the same. This one's just a little bit smaller. Let's see if that's right. Let's see. Okay. So, got my 2 equal sized discs of dough, and I'm going to show you how I prepare them to put them in the fridge in about 1 second. Hold on. These things are the best. Got to wrap it in plastic, put it in the refrigerator. Now I flatten it a little bit. About that size, yay thick. And then I pop those in the refrigerator just like that. You can leave them in for 30 minutes to an hour. They want you to chill it for at least a half an hour or maybe overnight. You can use this crust for anything. Now, depending on how hard it is and how long you've left it in there, you might need to let it sit out for a few minutes before you start using the rolling pin on it, or you're just going to hurt your arms. So mine will be in my refrigerator from 8:30 until about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. When I'm really in a hurry, I'll pop them in the freezer for a few minutes, and I've not had any problems with that. So we're about 19 minutes and 20 seconds in, and that's how long it's taken from start to finish to measure out and prep this to put it in the fridge to chill. So it's 20 minutes of my life to make a spectacular, gorgeous, golden, crispy, crunchy, homemade pie crust, which keeps people coming back for more. And this has been Eating at April's in my messy paint shirt. And I will see you next time. Bye bye.